Hello. So, you like plants? What if I told you that there was a whole world of plants outside of our outdoor gardening, small, teeny tiny community? What if I told you that this world, this plantopia, if you will, could be done all year round, regardless of outdoor conditions, rain, drought, snow, pestilence, acts of God, plagues? That's right, folks. We're diving into the wonderful world of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, aka the world of indoor plants. Hi garden friends, welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for joining me today. So I have a really fun video. It's something I've actually wanted to do for a while, but alas, here we are, it's raining outside. So I figured this would be a good day to film this. If you're new here, hi, my name is Crystal. I do mostly outdoor gardening videos, but something you guys didn't know about me is that I am actually a closet indoor plants enthusiast. I started mainly in my plant journey with indoor plants. I gardened as a kid, but I started collecting indoor plants probably 3 or 4 years ago now, and it is so much fun. I have amassed quite a collection, much to my husband's chagrin. But this video is actually a collab with plant mama Tatiana, and oh my gosh, you guys, her channel is literally so adorable. I cannot recommend her more. I'm so happy she agreed to do this collab with me. She's an indoor houseplant mama, and so she talks all about indoor houseplants and how to care for them, different types, her houseplant collection. So she has some really cool videos for you guys to check out. So please head over to her channel and check her out, give her videos a thumbs up, and let her know that I sent you. So today what we're going to be doing is I will be sharing 5 of my beginner houseplant tips, and then she will be sharing an additional 5 on her channel as well. 5 plus 5 equals 10. And so these are our 10 ride or die recommendations for new houseplant moms or dads, and to help you guys through the process. And even if you're a prospective houseplant owner, if you're interested in getting one and you would like to know where to start and just maybe some basics that will help you have success with your houseplants, then just stay tuned. That's what we're going to dive into today. So my 5 tips for today, I'm going to go ahead and display on the screen along with timestamps so that you guys know when I start talking about which topic, just in case you're here for one specific thing and you guys can jump right to that topic. Okay, so you are a new plant owner. You just brought home a beautiful, gorgeous plant and you are so excited. So you got yourself a fancy new pot, you got yourself some Miracle-Gro potting mix, and you're about to put your plant into the pot. Hold up. Before you repot your plants, one of my biggest tips is to wait a little bit before repotting. And the reason for this is that plants are interesting things. They tend to not do well with really immediate changes. So especially if it's a change in air pressure, if it's a change in temperature, if it's a change even in light, sometimes it can shock the plant a bit. So what I recommend is not repotting too soon after bringing it home. I recommend waiting a couple of days, if not a week, before repotting your plant. I know that it's super exciting to get a plant and you want to bring it home and you want to dress it up, you want to put it in its best uniform and its cute little outfit that you just got, but hold your horses a little bit. Honestly, most of the time you can just stick the nursery pot into the pot that you picked out so it looks like you potted it up anyway. We call that a cache pot, by the way. So you put it in cache pot, no harm, no foul, and then about 3 to 5 days later you can go ahead and repot with no qualms whatsoever. Now that you're ready to repot, let's talk about what pot is going to be the best for your needs. So it kind of depends on the plant that you have chosen, which Tatiana is actually going to cover choosing the right plant for you, so definitely check out what she has to say about that. But let's say that you got something that I have right here. So this is a Stromanthe Triostar. He tends to like a lot of water. He likes humidity. He likes to have fairly moist soil. So for him, ideally, I haven't put him in a pot yet, but ideally he would be in a ceramic pot because it is not porous, it tends to hold on to moisture a little bit more, and that tends to be a good option for plants that like a little bit of water. You can see that I have this guy in a terracotta pot. and I'll tell you why. I have a confession. I am a chronic overwaterer. For me, what works best is to have a terracotta pot because I do have a specific watering strategy. I have so many plants at this point that I often do bottom up watering, so it absorbs water up into the pot. Through the soil. I honestly fill up my bathroom tub and I put all of my plants in there. I set a timer for an hour, and that is how I water all of my houseplants. So if you are a beginner, I honestly normally recommend to go ahead and go with a terracotta pot. And the reason is that when you only have 1 or 2 plants, oftentimes you pay almost too much attention to them. You tend to overwater, you tend to overthink about when you're watering, what you're doing, if there's enough. And honestly, I have killed so many plants by paying too much attention to them. And when I say paying too much attention to them, really it's just overwatering them, you know, just giving them too much attention. Plants tend to, especially these type of plants that we have that are indoor plants, tend to do really well most of the time with fairly little care. And honestly, one of the worst things that you can do is overwater a plant. If you underwater, you can normally bring it back. It's really hard to bring a plant back from overwatering. And the reason is because overwatering can lead to something called root rot. And once the roots have rotted, they're gone. There is no coming back from that. The only way the plant's going to survive is if it makes new roots. So if you underwater, oftentimes they'll bounce right back. They tend to do fairly well, unless it's something like a calathea. Don't get calatheas if this is your first plant. So yeah, that would be my second tip, is to go ahead and go with a terracotta pot. If you do decide to go ahead and go with a ceramic pot, then I would just say make sure that you're not overwatering too much. And you can definitely, there are a lot of strategies you can do to make sure that you aren't overwatering. And one of the biggest ones is just to go ahead and stick your finger into the soil. If in the first inch it's still a little bit damp, don't water. If it seems dry within the first inch of soil, then go ahead and water it. Okay, so the next tip I have for you guys is when you're picking a pot, unfortunately, a lot of cute pots make one fatal mistake. They do not have drainage holes. This is the only pot that I have that does not have a drainage hole that the plant is actually planted in, and it isn't what we call a cache pot. So I mentioned that before, but that's essentially just a pot that's for decoration, and then there's another pot that fits inside of it. So the reason that this is so important is it goes back to the thing that I said just a minute ago about overwatering. So this is the only one that I have that doesn't have drainage holes, and I've only gotten away with it, honestly, because I've been taking care of plants for quite a while now. So I tend to kind of know the amount of water that this particular plant likes, and I've just gotten that through experience. So I would not recommend doing this. Do what I say, don't do what I do. I would go ahead and, if at all possible, when you pick out a pot that you're actually going to plant the plant in, of course you can always keep it in the nursery pot, but once you've picked out the pot, just make sure that it at least has one drainage hole, and or you could always drill a hole as well. So if you get a plastic pot, or you have like a diamond drill bit or whatever it is that you need to drill a ceramic pot, then you could always make a hole as well. So if that's something that you want to go through the effort of doing, if you're just really in love with a pot, then go ahead. Otherwise, when you're choosing one in the store, just make sure that you find ones with drainage holes. It's going to make your life so much easier. Okay, so next, let's talk about the dirt. So when you're choosing the soil type for your plant, there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. Depending on the plant that you chose, depends on the type of soil it's going to need. Obviously, a cactus comes from the desert, so it doesn't want to sit in water hardly at all. It barely wants water at all. Like, it pretty much could live without water. It can't live without water, but pretty much. Whereas if you have something like a prayer plant, or if you have something like a peace lily, they're going to want a little bit more water. They're going to want soil that tends to retain more water.
So I'm just now realizing while I'm editing this that I did not include any of my favorite pre-made potting mixes. So I'm going to go ahead and include those in the description below in case you are interested and you're not wanting to make your own potting mix. So go ahead and check those out if that's something that you want.
Something like a pothos. All of these things come from the rainforest or a tropical region that gets a good amount of water. So you're going to want to supply that plant with a soil type that will retain water a little bit more than you would for something like a cactus or maybe an orchid. And really this just comes down to where the plant came from. But honestly, a simple Google search about your plant will tell you which type of soil you should pick out. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. you can pick out a soil type that actually has the name of the plant on it. So there's lots of cactus mixes, there's lots of like tropical plant or regular houseplant mixes, and it'll have different plants on the front. So you can do it that way, or you can make your own soil. It just depends on what you want to do. But for me, as I've gotten further into my houseplant journey, I don't buy as many pre-made mixes as I used to. I have gotten some of the supplies that I need for the soil mix, and I mix it up myself just for simplicity's sake, and I've kind of figured out what's working pretty well for me. So if you need something that is going to be draining a little bit better, you can do two things. You can add two things to your soil. One of them is orchid bark, and orchid bark is exactly what you would think. It's literally bark. Big chunks, it's very chunky. There's not a lot of peat moss or any compost or anything finely milled in orchid bark, because that's what orchids like. Orchids actually grow on the sides of trees, so they don't like to have as much water around their roots, because they are like a vine. They literally like stick on the side. But I use orchid bark in a lot of different potting mixes. I use them actually for my Hoyas. I've used them for my Hoyas. I use them for my aloe or my succulents. I think this is, oh, I'm sorry, I do have a jade plant over there. I don't have very many succulents. I'm not a big succulent person. These particular plants like faster draining, free draining soil. So I added a good amount of orchid mix, and that helps just to free everything up so that the water can drain fairly quickly. So pretty much if you know that you have a plant that likes faster draining soil, just add a little bit of this, and this will help free everything up so that it can drain a little bit faster. If you don't want to go with orchid potting mix, then you can also go with some perlite. Perlite is just puffed volcanic rock, and this will also help break up your soil so that it can be a little bit freer draining. So you can also go with this if this is something you're comfortable with. This is a great option if you want your soil to drain just a little bit faster than just adding straight up houseplant mix, but you don't want to quite go all the way to having orchid bark where it would just be free flowing a lot faster, and you want something that's going to hold on to a little bit of water but also still be free draining enough that it won't be soggy when you're done with it. So this is a great option for those kind of plants. Now if you have an orchid, then obviously you would want some orchid bark, and then you would also want a little bit of orchid moss. And this is also really handy for those plants that like to retain a little bit more moisture. So pretty much what I do for my orchids is I mix some of this up along with some of this, and I make that into a potting mix. I put it into a fairly well ventilated pot, and then obviously I stick my orchid in it from the pot that it comes in. So now that we've talked about those three things, we're going to go ahead and move on to pests. So even though indoor plants have less pests than outdoor plants do, they still have pests. So there's a couple things that you can do to help prevent struggling with pests. And the first one is always clean up the little dead leaves. So if you see a dead leaf on your plant, go ahead and chop it off, and go ahead and take any dead leaves out of the pot, just because critters and pests and bugs tend to like things that are cool, dark, and moist. And so as the leaves break down, they create the perfect environment to harbor pests. So I would say just go ahead and get rid of those. And then the second thing that has worked for me, and pretty much the only thing that I've needed to do, is get yourself some neem oil. Invest in it, buy stock in it, love it. Pretty much you just want to get yourself some neem oil. This is a concentrate, so I just dilute this in a spray bottle and I spray that on my plants. And what this is a horticultural oil, and pretty much what it does is when you spray it on your plants, not only does it kill the bugs that are on your plants, it also helps to prevent those bugs from eating your plant. It's actually a deterrent for a lot of plants to eat the foliage on your plants. So you can actually use this on outdoor plants as well. I will say that I have found it less effective on outdoor plants than I have on my indoor plants, but this has been my ride or die for indoor plants. There has pretty much not been a pest that I have encountered that I haven't been able to control with neem oil. Every single other thing, like fungus gnats, I've been able to deal with neem oil. I've had a little bit of issue with some aphids inside. I had some, believe it or not, I had some earwigs at one point in time on my plants. all of which I have been able to successfully deal with neem oil. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't other products on the market that really work super well. Especially for fungus gnats, that's the most common one that I've dealt with. There is a sticky paper that I also use that you just stick inside your pot, and it attracts the fungus gnats to it, and then it also, obviously they stick to it, and then you just throw it out like once a week or something, depending on how bad your fungus gnat problem is. So just as a precautionary measure, I would definitely go ahead and recommend getting yourself a spray bottle of neem oil, keeping it on hand, and then just making sure to treat if you see any issue. And sometimes, honestly, I will even treat preventatively because it is just horticultural oil. It's not going to harm your pets or your kids or anything like that. So because of that, sometimes I will just do a preventative maintenance once a month and spray everything down just so that I know that if there's anything starting to kind of get its little claws into my plants, then we go ahead and just shut it down before that can actually become a problem. Okay guys, so that is all I have for you today. So those are my 5 tips when you're first starting out and you're looking to get your first initial houseplant, and how I would go ahead and recommend you guys start out. So I wish you guys the best of luck in buying some new houseplants. Honestly, they have been so much fun. I am still addicted to them, even despite it being a couple years later. I haven't bought as many of them recently, obviously, because I'm doing so much outside, but I love all the ones that I do have, and I highly recommend adding houseplants to your house. I just think that they add such a unique, beautiful element, and it's so calming. Okay guys, so those are my 5 houseplant tips for beginners. For the other 5, please head over to Plant Mama Tatiana's channel. I will go ahead and link her channel in the description, and then I will also card her video at the beginning and at the end right now, so that you guys can head over there, give her some love, and then check out her 5 tips as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!